Welcome back to another episode of The Horn Call, the official podcast of the International Horn Society. I am Kate Warren.
And I'm James Bolden, and we're delighted to be introducing an episode where we interview Elizabeth Freimuth.
Elizabeth gave us a wonderful discussion about her experience in the transition of going from a full-time playing position with the Cincinnati Orchestra and the Cincinnati Pops into being the new horn professor at Rice. And we really got the whole gamut of all of the things that have happened and all of what she has learned and what she's excited for in the future with this big transition in her career.
Yeah, it was a really enlightening conversation. And as you mentioned, Kate, it touches on just about everything, life, the universe, and everything. So we hope you enjoy our conversation with Elizabeth Freimuth. But anyway, welcome, and thanks so much for talking with us today. We're excited to have you here. So for anybody that doesn't know you, maybe just give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you're doing musically, and, I always enjoy hearing people's, how did you get where you are? Because, we all work with students, and for students, it's like there's not necessarily anything magical that happens between you're a student and then you're a professional. It's just time and effort and persistence. So the more we can kind of share people's stories, I think, the better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. It's truly a pleasure to be here and to have this conversation with you. So originally, I am from Western Pennsylvania, a very small town called Zelienople, Pennsylvania. Say that 5 times without getting a sprain in your tongue. I started horn when I was going into 5th grade. My dad was my first teacher. He was the high school band director. And I studied with him exclusively until my senior year in high school. Zelienople is outside of the Pittsburgh area. So during my senior year, I studied with a man named Dennis Abelson. He played in the Pittsburgh Ballet and Opera Orchestras, also taught at Duquesne University at that time. Then I went to the Eastman School of Music. I studied with Vern Reynolds. And during my senior year at Eastman, Peter Currell became the professor. So I was in that bridge time between Vern Reynolds and Peter Currell. So I had the benefit of getting to work with both of them. And then I did my master's degree at Rice University, studied with Bill Vermeulen, and got my first job in the Colorado Symphony straight out of school. I was assistant principal utility, but about 50% of that time I acted as fourth horn. I was only there for just over 2 years before I went to play principal horn in the Kansas City Symphony. I was there for 5 years. One of those years was a wild ride. I was simultaneously principal horn in the Kansas City Symphony and third horn in the St. Louis Symphony for 1 year.
Oh my goodness.
I taught it. Yes.
Oh, and it gets better because I also had my first teaching job, and that was as adjunct professor at UMKC. And I was had 14 students in Kansas City at the same time. So,
Wow.
Jeez.
I don't actually know how it all worked out, but it did, and it was amazing. And I was very alive for that entire year. I learned a lot. I did a lot, and it was exhilarating, and it was great. So after that, I spent 1 year as principal horn in the San Francisco Ballet Orchestra, and then I just am finishing now. I'm on a leave of absence, but I have resigned from my position in the Cincinnati Symphony, where I've spent 20 years as principal horn. And now I am the professor full-time at Rice University. So I've made a giant transition in my career recently. And this is we're coming upon the end of my first full year here at Rice University, the Shepherd School of Music. And I'm really thrilled to be back at my alma mater. And it's just an incredible sort of transition in my career. I have enjoyed performing for nearly 30 years in orchestras. And I would say the majority of that, I played principal horn. And I also taught. I taught not only at UMKC, but when I was in Cincinnati, I was also adjunct professor at CCM.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I love teaching. But beyond just loving the teaching, I realized in my career, the longer I did what I was doing, that I was so fortunate to get to do what I did because I had mentors that poured into me and supported me. And because of them, I enjoyed the career that I enjoyed. And so that became really a profound thing within me. And I knew the more I dwelled on that, the more I knew I wanted to essentially end my career. I feel young to say that, but I wanted the last and very long and very significant, most significant chapter of my career to be going full circle and being that person for other people that have now the dream that I had when I was their age. And I was able to fulfill that dream. So I'm thrilled to be on this side of things now. And that's what brought me to this point.
That's really interesting to hear that you felt this sense of calling to come back into teaching, and just from like conversations I've had with other educators in and out of music, that seems to be a big factor for a lot of people who are passionate about teaching. And you've set me up for like all of the questions that I asked you. So I think this is a great transition to say, like, now being in that full-time teaching role, coming from a full-time playing role, from both your artist's perspective and your educator's perspective, how does that feel? You can answer these separately, by the way.
Sure. Well, I am still only in my first year of this full-time teaching role, and I know that I still have a lot to learn. I'm fully aware that this is very new and that it's going to take some time to transition this entirely. Some of the things that I notice, both educationally and artistically, I would say, one is when you're playing a full-time job in an orchestra as principal horn, you always have concerts you're preparing, you always have concerts you're rehearsing, and you're always performing. It's a feeding frenzy of horn playing on a daily basis. And now I'm still performing chamber music and some recitals and things like that, but I decide what I'm preparing.
The volume is different.
It's a much lower volume, and I have much more say in that which I choose. And I'm finding that artistically, that's a real shift for me. I'm used to people dictating to me what I play, and having, full say on what I choose to play is actually kind of awkward. It's a little bit new for me. So I'm realizing that I can be quite indecisive, and that's part of the artistic learning curve for me. But educationally, I also realized that working with these incredible students, I mean, my students here are just so inspiring to work with. They're absolutely dedicated. They're hungry. They will do anything you tell them to do. And they come in completely prepared. They're preparing for auditions and recitals and stuff all of the time. And so my job mentoring them really keeps me on the edge of my seat, because everything I say matters so much, and I'm very aware of that. And so that's pretty humbling, to realize what an influence I could be. I also realize that spending so many hours in any given week working with students, you analyze a lot, right? That's our job, is to be problem solvers and to, analyze what they're doing and they're playing, and, help guide them to, more efficiency or whatnot. And then I go to play myself and I realize I have that analytical brain going in a much more profound way than I ever did as a performer. And I think that there's some good in that, but there can be some bad in that too. So I'm right now learning how to balance that analytical mindset versus the performance mindset, with having less performances. So that's kind of where I'm at with that transition. And like I said, I know that it's going to take some time. Coming back to my alma mater is surreal, honestly. There are so many faculty that are still here at the school that were here 30 years ago when I was a student, and to have the opportunity to be colleagues with them is surreal. There's no better way to say it. I look up to them. I always have, I always will. And I'm inspired by them. I was back then. They were some of the mentors that I credit for why I've had the career that I've had. And now I'm, shoulder to shoulder with them, helping these other students. And it's just an honor. It's such a privilege.
That's great. That's a fantastic answer. I was gonna ask if it's okay, kind of a related question to what Kate mentioned. So you've obviously had a lot of teaching experience. I think you kind of underplayed your teaching experience. You wouldn't be teaching at Rice if you didn't have teaching experience. But how has your teaching philosophy changed over the years? And I imagine, as you said, becoming a full-time teacher changes your philosophy a little bit. But, going from those early days, studying in undergrad and then in the professional world, working with students all those years, what are some things that you've noticed that have changed in your philosophy over the years, if at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a real open book, so I'm just going to be very, very honest here. So when I first started teaching, I was earlier in my career as a principal horn player. Like I said, my first job was in Kansas City at UMKC. And I was working with these students, and I realized they needed to learn everything I was working on. And I taught them from a perspective of, well, this is what I'm doing, so why don't you do it too? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. And over the years, I think my philosophy has changed. I've grown up a lot. And now my philosophy is, what do you need? And how can I help you? And it's not about what I'm doing. It's not from the lens of, this is how I'm doing this. This is how I've done this. It's just meeting each student exactly where they are in that moment. And every student's different, and really doing my best to be very present for where they are in their journey, and taking them from that place, understanding their goals. And some of their goals are different than mine were, and respecting that and helping to do my best to guide them to having success in their own goals. So I think that's my basic teaching philosophy, is really just meeting people where they are, and treating every student as an absolute individual. There's no two people that are built the same as far as DNA or our skeletal structure, and just really seeing the unique differences from one student to another, but also understanding that certain fundamentals of playing are true, and then figuring out how to balance or find the connecting point where I'm respecting these unique differences, but also bringing these sort of absolute fundamentals in standards to that point.
No, that's great. Kate looks like she has a question.
I just got a nice tangent from what you said there. Like, as you're obviously dealing with a different student population than all of us are, than we've ever had before, or than what the student population looked like when you were a student. So as you are like working with students, you said the word standards, and I was like, oh, how's the repertoire changing? What do you see in the student needs that if previous you could get a phone call would have gone, whoa, what?
That's a good question. I think that the standard has only gone up. and it continues to only go up over time, because the quality and the number of people that are able to produce that quality have increased over time. We're collectively, universally, we're graduating so many students year after year after year with these performance degrees, and there's only so many jobs. And so that vast number of people creates an intense pressure on any audition situation. And that in itself puts pressure on the standard to be higher and higher and higher. And that's just the way it has been over time, and it will continue to be that way. Whether it's, realistic or fair or not is beside the point. The standard is that which is out there in the world. And so understanding the pressures that these students have to excel in this industry, I have to understand what that standard is. I have to having been an active performer and taking a continued active role in participating and understanding what that standard is, so then that I can help them. It's really important.
That's great.
I got us off task, so I'll loop us back on track to what we were talking about before. So being back at Rice and getting to experience all of this, are there any student opportunities or organizations or things that were available to you as a student that were really helpful that are still available, and it's nice to see on the other side of things?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, of course, all of my experience with summer music festivals in the past, all of the summer music festivals, no. Eastern Music Festival, that was my first summer music festival. And I know that there is something that is coming back with that festival under a new name or something like that. I'm not fully aware of what's going on there, but every summer festival I went to really helped continue to mold me and expose me to, again, the standard that's out there. It allowed me to meet so many other musicians that I continued to run into, not only at auditions, but they became my colleagues in orchestras. In fact, at Eastern Music Festival, the summer I was there was a trombone student that was at that festival. And many years later, he became our CEO and president of the Cincinnati Symphony. Yet we met as students at Eastern Music Festival. So it really is such a small world. It gave me the opportunity to have so many contacts with people outside of my schools, and concerto competitions and things that those festivals offered, chamber music experiences with really, high-level coaches from other orchestras. So absolutely. Of course, the International Horn Society.
I know.
I must mention that the International Horn Society was there when I was a student, I saw it as an educational tool. I saw it as I read the magazines, the paper horn calls. That was something that I really enjoyed receiving in the mail. I read them cover to cover, and I was able to grow my knowledge of the instrument, again, beyond just the walls of the great schools I was at. But, it really exposes you to understanding that there's an international horn world, as well as not just Rochester, New York, Eastman School of Music horn world, Houston, horn world. It really just sort of broadens your view and understanding of what's going on in the whole world of music that involves the horn. But then as a professional, again, looping back to the music festivals, teaching at many of these music festivals, it's a completely different, being on the other end of things. It's really a wild ride. It's not lost on me just how blessed I am. I feel very privileged to have enjoyed and continue to enjoy the career that I have had and have. Then International Horn Society, again, being asked to be a featured artist numerous times, and being on the advisory council, participating with these organizations at a deeper level, not just reading the horn call alone, but of course now there's all of the digital material. It still continues to educate me and inspire me and broaden my view of what's possible and what's going on in the world. So I think all of those things are still there and very important. Another organization that it was there when I was a student, I will honestly tell you, I was not aware of it. It just wasn't in my my view, which is the International Horn Competition of America, which, I'm on the board of directors with that now. And that's another wonderful organization that, I don't know from a student perspective, but it was there. And again, just having that opportunity to see these young people through the university division, and there's the professional division. I mean, just broadening my view, my exposure, and I'm continuing to build my own education through these organizations.
Terrific. I was going to circle back just a little bit, and if you don't mind me asking, I was going to ask just some sort of like nitty-gritty, detailed kind of teaching questions, because we're all teachers in some capacity here. So the first thing was, how has your use of technology changed over the years? Because obviously we're having this conversation digitally, and you mentioned the digital version of the horn call and resources and stuff. But like, what are some of the things that you feel are positive things in terms of technology, and then maybe some things that you kind of maybe wish we could go back to the old days, so to speak?
Yeah, this is such a great question, because I will start by saying I am definitely technologically challenged. I would never be able to host a podcast. I don't know. That just seems like a tall order. But yeah, there are many things that frustrate me with technology, but I would say the most significant difference between when I was a student and now, as far as that technology is concerned, that I think is a fantastic thing for people now, is there's any recording you want is at your fingertips. You can listen to these podcasts. You can hear what fill in the blank person has to say about fill in the blank topic that you're interested in. It's really amazing. There is just an endless supply of information right there at the ready. And so when I was a student, you had to go to the library, you had to buy recordings and get them sent to you through snail mail, or we went to some of these things called record stores that again don't exist anymore. It was such a slower pace. When you wanted to apply for a professional audition to send your resume, you did it through the mail, the actual United States Postal Service mail. And now everything's online, everything's digitally done. So everything's so much more immediate. We're just in a much more fast-paced world, which that's great. I think the one thing that I do regret about where things are today, and this is a really tough balance. I'll tell a story about my first successful audition. It was at the Colorado Symphony, as I mentioned, and I flew to Denver, took the audition, was offered the job, and it was only after that that I knew how many weeks the orchestra was in season or what it paid. I didn't know that they were a Con 8D section, an exclusive Con 8D section in advance of going. I did not know any of these other things, the pay scale, the number of weeks. I'm assuming that I knew that Marin Alsop was the music director, because that would have been on the information that they sent. But I really honestly, it seems embarrassing to say this now, because I believe we all know who Marin Alsop is very well, and she's incredible, but I didn't really even know who the music director was. in advance of taking that audition. And that is hard to imagine today, because anything you want to know, you can know. You can know who was a finalist at any audition. You can know, within minutes who won any audition, because everything goes online. But I really do think that it was a benefit to me when I went to that audition to not know any of that information that one could say is important information, but it didn't cloud my ability to focus on the task at hand. And I showed up with the goal to advance. And then when I advanced, my goal remained the same, advance. And if your goal remains just advance every single time, well, then in the end, if you're the last ones continuing to advance, then you've won the audition. And I found it really, easy to keep that focus, because I didn't have this feeling of, oh my gosh, I could buy these things if I had that salary, or, I would live here or there. This is the rep they're playing next season, and I'd really like to play that. I just was not flooded or overwhelmed with information that, frankly, on the day of the audition, it doesn't matter.
Helpful.
It's not helpful. And I do think that people can become more paralyzed knowing too much. And it's a very distracting world when it comes down to it. And I think the ability to focus on that task at hand becomes more difficult because we know so much before we show up.
Yeah. So how do you get your students to, how do you help them sift through all that information and,
Right. I just tell them this, and I tell them, you really have to be careful. Too much information about, when you decide you're going to take an audition, that's kind of the beginning and the end of it. It's like, you've committed, okay, leave it alone. The only goal beyond at that point is your preparation. And to prepare at the level of the standard, and understanding that the standard is the standard, and preparing to that standard, and then being able to perform at the same level that you prepared.
Right.
And that's really the beginning and the end of it. It's not your ticket. The horn isn't, so many people see the horn as their ticket, like the ticket between being a student into being a professional, or their ticket to paying off student debt, or to being able to buy that car or that next level instrument that they're really wanting to get. And I think that can be just really suffocating. So always bringing it to the preparation, the artistry, the task at hand. And the more I can, keep my students and the conversations that we have really being focused on those things that are within our control, then it maybe allows that part of their thinking to be the most active going into those auditions and those performances.
That's terrific. Yeah. I got lots more questions, Kate, but I don't want to monopolize conversation.
You go ahead.
Well, okay. So I have to geek out on the Cincinnati Symphony recordings. Like, I don't know how many of those old Telarc or Eric Kunzel recordings you're on. I imagine it has to be some of them, but like
a lot.
Anybody that doesn't know the Cincinnati Symphony, you can't sleep on. You have to go listen to some of these Cincinnati Symphony recordings. The Mahler recordings, they're all so good. But I just wanted to geek out on that for a second. But do you have any like stories from recording sessions or anything that are able to be shared? Anything interesting from those things?
You will be entertained by this, but I think I mentioned that the 1 year before I joined the Cincinnati Symphony, I was principal horn in the San Francisco Ballet. And as one can imagine, the San Francisco Ballet plays a lot of nutcrackers.
A lot of F sharps.
A lot of them. And when I went to the Cincinnati Symphony, at that time, the Cincinnati Symphony did not play the ballet. And so it was a period of time in the Cincinnati Symphony that there was no Nutcracker, and I kind of couldn't believe it. Because I had played the Nutcracker every year in Kansas City. I just played, I don't remember 40 some Nutcrackers during the season in San Francisco. And lo and behold, my first services with the Cincinnati Symphony were with the Cincinnati Pops with Eric Kunzel recording the Nutcracker.
That's hilarious.
I just thought, oh my gosh, God,
I'm going to play Nutcracker for the rest of my life.
Yes. It was really, really funny. So anyways, it was probably a good time for me to record it, given that I'd played it so much recently to that point. So that was a really, a funny thing starting out in the orchestra. When I first started in the Cincinnati Symphony, they had a relationship with Telarc, and every year for the first, I'm terrible with remembering or estimating these things, but I would say probably the first 8 years I was in the orchestra, maybe 10, the orchestra recorded 2 full CDs with the Pops and 2 full CDs classical. So we did 4 full recordings. They were CDs back then in the olden days, right? Every year. And so that adds up quickly. So Paavo Järvi was the music director that hired me in Cincinnati. And when, like I said, and the Pops music director was Eric Kunzel when I started. So we did a lot of recordings, and then, things shifted, Telarc ceased to exist as Telarc, and many orchestras went to creating their own labels. And, but there was sort of a transition between that time that we were doing all of those recordings with Telarc and the time where we were really recording under our own label. And the Telarc recordings, those 4 CDs a year, they were done as recording sessions. That was session recording. So, that's a really, really awesome experience to grow you, and learning how to do that. And especially in a large ensemble where you don't want to be the one person that's the reason why you have to do it again.
Want to mess up that take. Yeah.
Although I do remember very clearly being in I think it was a patch session. This was later with Louis Longray as the music director, and I had a terrible cough. And here we were recording, and there was just one time I couldn't do anything about it, and I just exploded.
Oh no.
And everything came to a screeching halt. So everybody has to really do their part in those recording sessions. But later, after we transitioned to having our own label, also we went more towards live recordings, and live recordings with patch sessions. And I think that there's an interesting difference in these recordings, not only because, just the labels are different, and maybe some of the recording engineering is different, but because that live experience adds another level of excitement. There's just a natural added adrenaline that's going on with the performers, and sort of capturing some of that in recording, I think, is actually better, in my opinion. And then you clean it up with some patch sessions. So it's a more efficient recording process. But there's this element of surprise that's still there. Of course, then we went through the COVID era where then everything went online, and then navigating through the live stream stuff, which, I'll be very honest, that was another adjustment. It's one thing to record and produce, a CD or something that becomes available to the public. But this idea that you're live streaming in the entire universe in your mind, you think it's possible that everybody on the planet is actually listening to you.
Every horn player is fingering along to your part.
Oh, yeah. And kind of having to reckon with, are people watching, and not being distracted by that idea, but really being able to, again, just be focused on the task at hand. And that's the art and what you're doing. But I think that's not an insignificant thing that happened when we went to all of this live stream.
Yeah, it goes back to that technology thing. Yeah, it opens up avenues on one hand, and then on the other, it kind of creates more problems sometimes.
Yeah, because if you think that every teacher you ever had, every relative, all the strangers that live in other countries you've never met, they're all listening and they're evaluating you, they're judging you. I mean, and it is true. Like, you can go online, and social media can be very, very mean as far as that goes. And it can be very suffocating is the word that I used before. And I really think that it's hard not to be distracted by that and not be so then sort of paralyzed and overly concerned with, again, you don't want to miss anything. And if you're playing from that perspective, it's very left brain. It's not artistic. It's usually not your best.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's still a moving target for many people.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So in this era where, like, you're right, there's this immense pressure of how we can be perceived online and who's watching and who's listening and what the reaction is, as you're dealing with this student body, this class of students whose lives are deeply entrenched online, where, like, our mode of modern music networking almost demands that they have a musical presence online, that their playing is online. How are you perceiving that? What conversations are you having with your students about that idea of putting their playing on the internet and its permanence and its reception and its use as a tool or its hindrance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I struggle with this exact thing because I have two daughters that are 12 and 14 years old. So, I mean, they're not
they're not putting their Fringe Run playing online, but they're live.
Yeah, they're not putting musical stuff online, but my own kids, I restrict any kind of social media. And I personally do not have any social media anymore. I used to, but I realized that it can be addictive. And I think I was just wasting too much time and energy wondering what other people were doing and realizing, like, what people put out there isn't real. It's the best of what they can present. And it can be kind of stressful. And you can find yourself comparing yourself to others because it's out there. They put out their best. I mean, not only as musicians, but like as mothers, as friends, as just people in the world. Oh, this person's volunteering in all of these things, and they're, also doing all of these things professionally, and their kids are doing all of these amazing things. It's really hard not to get sucked into comparing yourself and feeling pretty lousy, because we're all aware of our own dirty laundry. Right. And no one puts that stuff online. And so I just, there is a lot of good, but there is so much that just adds a lot of distraction and pressure. And I just decided I didn't want that in my life anymore. So originally I started off with just eliminating the app on my phone. And then I realized, it was very easy just to type in Facebook into a browser.
It auto completes it for you, and just you're logged in already. And
that didn't work. And so I realized I really needed to actually delete the accounts. And I also saw there was a lot of stuff online with social media. If you don't say that you have an opinion on something, well, people will assume that your silence means it's this other opinion. And they could be wrong, but you're kind of guilty whether you
Both
do or
ways.
do not. Right. And when you put things of your playing on the internet, you're opening yourself up to anyone's opinion, whether it's informed or not, whether it's fair or not, it will be there. Vern Reynolds had I don't remember the exact quote. He had some wonderful quotes, but he had a quote that said something to the effect of, whether it's fair or not, whether it's informed or not, anyone that hears you playing in any moment has a judgment, has an opinion. And it's true. And that was kind of the reality 30 plus years ago when I was a student. I was in the practice room. Anybody walking by, hearing you, they think it's good or they think it's not good. Now we're doing that on purpose, putting it out for the entire world with a commenting, application like right under the recording. And so you have to be very, very aware that there's good, bad, and ugly out there. And so I think that it's important to protect yourself and to protect what your capacity for criticism is, and what your capacity for these opinions, that they're going to be there. And so, and like you said, once you put something out there, it's there forever. Even if you delete it, it's somewhere out there, and someone can find it. So we have to be careful. And your best today will not, ideally speaking, will not be as good as your best in 5 years.
Right.
But in 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, that thing that you put out that was your best at that time, someone's going to say, oh, I heard a recording of, fill in the blank person playing, name that tune, and it wasn't very good. I don't know why they're, having this career they're having. And, it's completely, it's outdated, but it's out there.
Yeah. Well, and the whole setup of it is, it's almost designed to get you to compare yourself, because you're seeing all of these things, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, the more you hover over something, the algorithm is going to show you more of that. So if it's one of these things, they're going to send you 20 more of those same things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. During COVID, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, we're supposed to be making these multi-track recordings of ourselves. What? I haven't done that. I'm such a failure. I don't actually even know how to do this. I have failed just having my normal life. Because that's what many people were doing at that time.
It's easy to spiral. Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And that itself is a very interesting concept. Like, yes, you as a full-time orchestral horn player with a very prestigious job, I have failed because I don't know how to edit a multi-track video in a software on a computer that has nothing to do with my job.
Exactly. But because I'm like making myself aware of this by participating in social media and watching these things at that time, it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. I don't know enough. I'm not good enough. And if I feel that way, then I know that many other people feel that way at that time.
So looping this back to how you mentor your students about the evolving space, is your advice for them then to abstain or to remove?
No, they are all very aware that I do not have social media, and I'm not going to. They're very aware. They're aware that I used to. I have so many other opportunities that one could say are for recruiting. And I think, I'm fortunate enough to have an active enough life as a performer, as a teacher, and enough years of having done that at this time, I don't feel that I need that as a tool for that purpose. the students, it's up to them. But I think it's important that they hear my reason why I don't have social media. And again, it's like, I don't think it's an evil thing at all. My husband has it. He keeps me informed of interesting things that are going on. So I have an awareness. I don't live in a cave, but at the same time, I just am not actively involved in it myself. And so I think that my students, the more I talk to them about, there's the positive things, but there are some things that can be distracting about it. And it's important just to have those conversations. So that's the best I can do. I don't tell them they shouldn't do those things. I do have students that put their playing on social media, and I think they sound great. I don't know what their recordings on social media actually sound like, because I'm not actively on it, but I know that they're doing that, and I think that they seem pretty solid and pretty comfortable with it. But it's important for them to realize that once you do that, you're opening yourself up to something that can't be reversed.
Yeah, and you kind of have to know yourself. You obviously know you didn't want it to lead to that sort of spiraling thing, and that's where you decided you were better off without it. And so everybody's in a different place and got their own kind of take on it. You just have to decide, is it worth it or is it not worth it? And everybody's kind of got to look at it with their own metrics.
Yeah. I mean, how much time are you spending looking at other people's things or just watching reels? I mean,
doom scrolling. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, they'll send you all the dog videos. I mean, all of the cat videos, all of the horn videos. Yeah. And I mean, you could just get sucked. It's just a lot of time can disappear like that. Yeah. And you aren't even aware of it. So
absolutely. Well, Liz, this has been a fantastic conversation. Time has gone by really quickly, and I don't want to take up too much. We don't want to take up too much of it, but if I could just kind of, if unless Kate had anything else you wanted to say, I was just going to wrap things up at the end by maybe just asking, so obviously you've gone from this, just playing all the time, you said, just 100% all the time, full-time playing. And now you're spending more of your time teaching than you were before, but you're obviously still performing a lot. But how has your fundamentals, your routine, your mechanics, and that sort of thing, have you had to change anything just to stay at the standard and to keep your playing in order?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I always was a player that was dedicated to spending time playing fundamentals before a rehearsal. So warm up, whatever you want to call it, every morning. And then I would spend all of those hours in rehearsal, and then I'd go home from rehearsal and find time to practice, looking ahead in the schedule and in the season for what am I preparing for? What am I trying to be in front of? Mm-hmm. And so that's more hours on your face in a day than one has just teaching and playing and demonstrating in their lessons. So every day I'm much more aware and dedicated to having a larger time of fundamental routine. And then I also am just thinking about my own sort of creating challenges and goals and projects for the future, even if they're further out, just exploring music that I never really had time or an excuse to spend time playing. I'm really enjoying that. I'm buying a lot of music these days, and it's really fun for me to just sit there and read through things that I didn't even know existed. A lot of it is new music, so it didn't exist before, but playing in the orchestra world, my focus was primarily on what was coming up later in the season. Mm-hmm. And now I'm thinking much more along the lines of recital repertoire, and also students, they know repertoire that I don't know. And so they're bringing things in. And then I think, well, I will learn that too. And so I do spend a lot more time beyond my fundamentals every day. Just part of it is just gaining time on the face so that I maintain a efficiency and a strength in my playing. But also just, again, I'm trying to catch up. And there's a whole host of solo repertoire that has not really been the focus of my performance world for the entirety of my career. But now, not only do I have the opportunity for that, it's also my responsibility because the students are playing a lot of that. And so it's fun. So that's kind of the shift in my own personal practice time every day. I am a practicer. I like to play the horn. I don't understand how to, I don't take time off very well. Maybe I'm learning how to do that better. And I can continue to learn to do that better. But I find I'm just so used to my routine as an orchestra player every night, every evening. When things would calm down after the kids would go to bed, I would go to my practice room. And I kind of still feel that in me. I do that still, whether I am working on something that's for tomorrow or something that's not for 6 months. It's just my routine. So I'm still doing that.
That's awesome. Well, great. Well, yeah, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's really wonderful to have this chance to have these conversations, and I appreciate you so much.
Likewise. The Horn Call Podcast is the official podcast of the International Horn Society. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the International Horn Society. Copyright International Horn Society. Music by Brian K.M.